Introducing you to people across North Carolina and around the world who put their Catholic faith into action. This is FaithWorks on Catholic 540 AM Divine Mercy Radio. Now, here's your host for FaithWorks, Ellen White.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of FaithWorks on Divine Mercy Radio. Our show highlights individuals through God's grace who put their faith into action daily. Amazing people who have an interesting, sometimes overlooked impact on our Catholic faith. On FaithWorks, we share their stories. I'm your host, Ellen White. Today on FaithWorks, we're exploring a journey that weaves together faith, doubt, creativity, and an unexpected encounter with St. Maximilian Kolbe, a story that ultimately led to the new film Triumph of the Heart. And here to walk us through that journey is Anthony D'Ambrosio. Welcome to Divine Mercy Radio, Anthony. We're so grateful for your time today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm super happy to be here.
Oh gosh, all the way from Colorado. Snowy Colorado.
Yeah, that's right.
We're grateful for that. Okay, so like I said before we got started, Anthony, I so appreciated learning about you and your family. I'm certainly familiar with your dad and his work, his previous work many years ago in Catholic media. But why don't you take us into your early faith story? What were the moments, big or small, that first formed your relationship with God and began to shape the direction of your spiritual life?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So I grew up, if many people, maybe those who are listen to Catholic radio often have come across my father. He's an amazing theologian, amazing gifted speaker and teacher. And so I grew up with, I think one of the most blessed, experiences of formation in the Catholic faith, that I could have had, and kind of came away from that, very radically, devoted to God, to evangelization, to spreading, Catholicism. And, I went to seminary even, and in that time really kind of found my artistic voice, and wanted to see the world, set on fire for the Lord. And I didn't really know exactly how I was going to apply my hand to that, but found that I had a great gifting in youth ministry. Ultimately determined that the priesthood was not the place for me to work, that there was something more creative and more kind of unique out there that the Lord wanted me to do. And I left, and as one does, when one leaves seminary, with a philosophy degree, I was like, I can either teach or I can do youth ministry. So I did youth ministry for a few years. And during that time, I ended up becoming very ill. I had what we now know is like a chronic fungal infection that became a really big part of my life and my story. But at the time we didn't really know. It was one of these diseases that no one could diagnose, and there was no sort of solution or answer, and lots of every doctor that I went to had nothing to say about it and just said, you're fine. Everything's good here. You might want to get your brain checked. And so one of the symptoms of it was a chronic debilitating insomnia. I could only sleep for about 20 minutes to 2 hours a night during kind of the worst stints of it. And that when you're experiencing sleep deprivation to that degree, it just completely, upends your life. Like a few nights of that and you can function, but if it's, a month of that, then your life just sort of devolves. And I had to really kind of come to grips with not being able to be effective. I was about to get engaged when this happened, and I couldn't move into marriage and into the vocation that I thought that God had given to me. In sort of the grief and loss of all of that, I was, I lost my faith. I became an atheist. I couldn't see how a good God could exist in a world that such meaningless and sort of horrible suffering could happen to somebody. And I just started to really kind of find the answers that people in my community were giving me to be very thin, and very, like it didn't really have much meat to them. But I ended up finding St. Maximilian Kolbe's story while I was doing a freelance writing project. It was like one of the few jobs that I could do. And I was writing an article for a Catholic startup that had St. Maximilian Kolbe as a patron, and I needed to, do some research about him. And as I was doing research, I found a few facts that I didn't know about his story that really transformed it for me. I had heard about it from the perspective, of the man whose life was saved. And of course, that's like a really beautiful part of the story. But I didn't realize that he survived for 14 days without food or water inside of the starvation bunker, and that he wasn't executed alone, that there were 3 other men that were executed with him. And that this sort of opened up because of the suffering that I was going through, I could understand how miraculous that was. Because for me to get like one more day, even in the suffering that I was going through, was only a small modicum of what those men were going through. Like to decide, like I'm going to live for 14 days, even though I know I'm going to die. And I'm going to use my voice to praise God in the midst of that. Like that takes a superhuman, hope that, you can't use small, cheesy sort of live, laugh, love, faith type statements to get you through that kind of dark night of the soul. There had to be something real there. And so it kind of fascinated me, and just like, I was almost obsessed with that story. And when I woke up in the middle of the night, I would begin to meditate on that as my way to sort of, like find answers. And that led to writing the script for the movie that we made, and ultimately led to what, this beautiful adventure that I've been on for the last.
Anthony, I've got a couple of questions too. So I missed it. Tell me how it was that you came to write about St. Maximilian Kolbe in the midst of your suffering. What was that? It was a project or something?
Well, yeah, I was writing about so basically I was doing a freelance writing project for a startup. Okay. And they wanted me to put a little bio about St. Maximilian Kolbe and a little article about him on their website. So that was how I'm laughing because it's so much how God works in the midst of these things. We think, it's just some flippant little thing. And no, it actually transformed your life when you had to spend some time really reflecting on him. And like you, Anthony, I didn't realize that he wasn't shot alone. He was with 3 other men. And it was 14 days in that starvation bunker. I did not know that either. The movie, and we'll keep saying this throughout this interview, is phenomenal. What you experienced in the midst of your suffering, I'm sure, came through in what these actors portrayed on screen. It's the best. You come across so many Christian Catholic films that are so cheesy, and they're just not even worth, 5 or 10 minutes to watch, and it's painful. But in the midst of this, it's so authentic and so real, and it really does inspire. It inspired me to go the extra mile in the midst of whatever suffering I'm encountering. So kudos to you for being able to bring that to light on screen. First of all, I think that's fantastic. Now, I'm curious, Anthony, how old were you when you were going through this illness? Is it mid-20s? Yeah, so it was my mid-20s.
Yeah, wow, that's tough. And to not have any answers. So how long did the suffering, how long did you go through the suffering before you got answers?
So it took about 8 years to get like my diagnosis. Okay. It wasn't, and admittedly, it wasn't like that bad the entire time. Right. There were sort of ups and downs with it where like my life became a little bit more manageable, and but it just was always like I could never rely on it. I could never rely on being able to sleep. And yeah, I think that whenever whenever I would have a flare up, again, everything would just sort of fall apart.
Yeah.
So that took about 8 years, where maybe 3 of those years were like complete sort of bedridden, like devastation, and then the other ones where I was just sort of like, it was tough, but I was able to get by,
get through half a day or just the morning.
Yeah.
Yes. Wow. So was it really studying St. Maximilian Kolbe and really kind of internalizing his own suffering and how he got through it, the breaking point or the awakening for you? Tell me about how that happened.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as faith is, it's very rare that there's like one thing, it's easier to talk about that in a testimony or a story if you've got a short amount of time,
right,
to kind of condense it all into like a linear path.
Right.
But it was a lot more messy than that. I, conversations with family and experiences in liturgy that also were all big parts of this. But yes, the story of St. Maximilian Kolbe was absolutely one of the big parts of the healing of my soul, which I think was actually a necessary prerequisite to the healing of my body. I needed to have hope. Yeah, I needed to have hope to be able to get to the point. I mean, anybody that's tried to navigate like the healthcare system with chronic illness, it's literally torture. If it wasn't torture enough to just be sick, like trying to figure out how to communicate with doctors and like just navigate all of the different sort of the labyrinth of options that are out there. And to do so with hope and to keep on sort of spending money on tests and all this stuff, it takes like a determination that like I just did not have. But the hope that I was gaining, when I would find myself waking up in the middle of the night with a panic attack, I would begin to meditate on Maximilian Kolbe's cell and begin to write these dialogues. And not really having any sense of like, oh, this is going to be a movie someday. It was really just kind of for me. And I became the witness, to what they were going through, to what Kolbe was doing for the men in the cell. And I feel like that ministry that Kolbe kind of gave to me really began to help heal my heart. And over the course of years, I didn't come back in one straight line. It took many years for me to sort of feel like, oh, I can really call myself Catholic again. But yeah.
I love that scripture passage that says God writes straight with our crooked lines. So, it's not linear. And there are, twists and turns and ups and downs. And I'm so glad that you brought that to the forefront. So you needed St. Maximilian Kolbe and his intercession to kind of heal you spiritually, to navigate the medical issues that you were going through. That's very well said. I like that. All right. So let me ask you this before we move on more to St. Maximilian Kolbe, because I think his story is so important for our time. What do you understand, Anthony, about suffering now that you didn't then?
I mean, so much. Yeah, that is such a big question. It's like hard to digest into a single answer, but I guess I'll say this. I think the first thing that comes to mind right now is that when I was growing up, I saw like suffering and resilience in suffering to be sort of a matter of discipline and willpower. And I think when I began to understand St. Maximilian Kolbe's story and his sort of supernatural ability to face darkness, what I saw was a sense of God's tender love for him, and a really clear vision of heaven being the things that drove him to being able to accomplish such superhuman feats. And I think that we as Catholics, like we really, really love I don't know, like this, the way that we portray saints often is they were holy from the moment that they were levitating at 4 years old, you know? Mm-hmm. And even there was like in the research that I was doing about St. Maximilian Kolbe, there's a lot of that type thing. But I think that a lot of that is like, I don't know, a sort of like hometown community trying to sell him as a saint, that then during the canonization process that ultimately like becomes calcified in the record, right, but isn't necessarily real. Like, right. I think that if you actually look down into the reality of who he was just as flawed as anybody else. Exactly. Like he had an OCD-ness that was like, you know, really off-putting for a lot of people that he worked with. He had a certain kind of rigidity that was, I would say that's pretty like normal for Polish people, but he had an extreme version of that. That was unhelpful for him. But I think, you know, these experiences that he had of the same God that we all have come to know and love, who's ministered to us, who stepped into our suffering and loved us in the midst of our sin and our darkness, he had that same experience, and he knew that God, and that God softened his heart and gave him these images of these tastes of heaven, through his own experience of chronic illness, actually. He had a tuberculosis, so he was constantly having to sort of be bedridden in the midst of all these crazy hard things that he was doing. And ultimately it was during those experiences where he had these visions of heaven that became, I think, really core to his personality later on down the road, and his ability to kind of minister in Auschwitz.
Mm-hmm. Very well said about suffering too. And with the saints, I actually host a monthly segment on my show FaithWorks where we highlight saints for the month, and it's called Saints in the Making for a reason, because they weren't born saints. It was a process that, you know, developed over time. Lord willing, we can do the same thing. So that, and that's the whole premise for the show. We're not born saints. It's something that evolves if we are working with our Lord and his grace and doing what we can. Or what would I hear recently? We step back up after we sin instead of staying down. So I think that's so important. All right. If you're just tuning in and joining us, this is Ellen White on FaithWorks on Divine Mercy Radio. I'm here with filmmaker Anthony D'Ambrosio, and we're talking about his new film, Triumph of the Heart, the story of St. Maximilian Kolbe, the hope he offers in the midst of suffering, and the creative journey behind bringing this film to life. We're so grateful for our show's sponsor, Thales College. All right, so you were writing things about St. Maximilian Kolbe, and obviously he was transforming your heart and your mind. Anthony, when did you realize that you needed to tell the story or share it with a wider audience?
Yeah, again, that's also one that like came in waves. Yeah. But there was like one particular moment that I would say was the most powerful, which was during it was 2022. I had written the first draft of the script, and I was speaking with somebody who was Polish about my idea for the movie. This, of course, was still like very much a napkin idea, right? Like it was very, very early and fledgling and fragile. And but this Polish woman who had a deep devotion to him was like, "You need to go to Poland. If you're going to do this, you have to go to Poland." And I guess I was like, am I going to do this? And I guess I do need to go to Poland. Like she took it so much more seriously than I was really taking it, ready to take it. But her enthusiasm really kind of called me forward, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go to Poland. I'm going to spend time with the friars there, and I'm going to be there during Kolbe's feast day. to celebrate that with the Polish people.
Wait. So Anthony, tell me. So friars, Franciscan friars, I assume, because St. Maximilian Kolbe was Franciscan. Tell me about the area for those that are tuning in that might not even be familiar with what it is that you're talking about. Educate us. So where did you go, and what was your intention with this trip?
Yeah, so I went to Poland to spend time finishing, adapting the script for the movie while being in the midst of his homeland. And I think one of the reasons why this is so important is because if you've seen the movie, you just realize like how important Poland is to the story. Like Kolbe he's a Pole as much as he is a Catholic, and his crusade is for the identity of both of those things intertwined together. And that's something that like we as Americans just could never really grasp without going to Poland. But their national identity is so tied in with devotion to Mary as their queen that it really is like impossible to have a Polish identity that doesn't have Catholicism somehow baked in. And as people were assaulting the Polish identity, he was crusading for it. And so to write that script, to understand Kolbe, I needed to be in Poland there with the friars who perhaps did not know him themselves, but who knew those who did know him. And to interview them about him and try to understand beneath the hagiography, like who really was Kolbe as a brother, as a community member. And so, I mean, Poland is kind of like the Kansas of Europe. If you took like the Midwest of the U.S. and gave it 2,000 years of artistic tradition, you would have essentially Poland.
Okay, that's a great description.
Yeah, so it's like this incredibly homey, like breadbasket, like farmer type world, but with a really high sense of culture and art. They name their streets after Chopin and their favorite poets. So these are farmers who are also artists.
Oh, wow.
And I would say that one of the things that was really unique about Polish art was just how you could see the trauma of the people in its artistic tradition. It's a place that has constantly had to fight for its independence, for its identity, for its Catholicism, and has been constantly under attack and assault by its neighboring countries. That's right between, Germany and Russia. And for, its entire existence in the course of Christendom, it's been, fighting those two powers for its right to live, I guess.
Right.
And so all of these stories and its whole kind of artistic kind of perspective is like this very scarred, a scarred people who are willing to sort of stand in the face of suffering and continue to hold on to their identity stubbornly in the midst of that. And so Kolbe was himself very much like a son of that culture.
That's fantastic. And what area did you focus on when you were doing your research and getting familiar with the friars?
Poland is not a massive country. And so you can kind of cover the whole thing. I was there for 2 weeks, 2 months, and I was able to, spend time both in Niepokalanów is the friary that Kolbe started. It became the biggest friary of the world in his day, and it was. And then I went down to Auschwitz, and there's a friary there that's next to it that kind of carries more of Kolbe's spirit. So yeah, those are the places that I spent the most time in. But yeah, to get to your question about the moment, it was actually during Kolbe's feast day, thousands of Poles come together and process to Auschwitz and have a mass in Kolbe's honor on the street in front of his his cell. Okay. His prison block.
Wow.
And so, you're walking with flags, singing songs, like under this terrifying kind of Albermach gate that's so famous as like the the entrance to Auschwitz, and then you're with the bishop and all of these like choir members were singing the songs that these men likely would have been singing inside of the cell for mass. Like I was literally sitting on the doorstep of the prison block that he was condemned to death in. And so I remember going to reverence the cell and just having this sense, this overpowering sense of my own inadequacy, like I'm sick. I've never made a movie before. And this story is not just a story about a saint. Like it's a story about the Polish people, and I'm not a Pole, like what kind of audacity to be the one to say, hey, I'm going to make this movie. And so, yeah, I'm just feeling this crazy imposter syndrome and the sense of like the bigness and gravity of it. And I go and reverence the cell of Kolbe in this struggle, and I come back out, and there's a first-class relic that everybody is kind of in line going up to reverence before finishing the mass during the last song. And as I kiss the relic, I feel a man, like physically a man's lips, like kissing me back on the lips. And I literally jumped back and like hit the other person behind me. I was so startled by it. And I just felt like Kolbe saying, like, I've chosen you, like you're the one that I've chosen to do this. And I'm going to give you what you need in order to make it happen. And that certainly turned out to be the case. So.
Wow, for sure. Yeah. It certainly came on the screen. Wow, you did such a fantastic job telling the story and with the various characters. How did you determine, without giving too much away, because I really want to encourage our listeners to see the film, but how did you determine which scenes you would do and which characters you would focus on? Obviously, with the other cellmates. How many cellmates did he have with him? Before at the beginning, there were 10 total. Okay. And which scenes, which characters you would like to focus on? How did you determine that as you went through and wrote the script? I'm just curious.
Yeah. Sorry, can you repeat that? It broke up for a second.
Sure. So I was asking about how you determined which characters, which scenes you would focus on. I know that there's a guard, or I guess a leading military officer that's not getting what he wants as far as St. Maximilian Kolbe being killed, and focus on him and his family, and that juxtaposition to, what St. Maximilian Kolbe is going through in the bunker with the other men. How did you determine that? I'm just curious what process you went through.
Yeah, I guess like the most important thing to understanding like how I was going to tell the story was to understand what part I really wanted to tell. Like the medium of a movie is actually incredibly short. I think people are pretty shocked by when they actually realize like how little is able to be stuffed into a movie. Like each scene has to do so much work in order to tell it, because you're trying to compress like something as epic as like the last portion of somebody's life weeks into an hour and a half, and to do that you have to be really focused. A novel can wander around, you don't have to be as like disciplined, but with a movie you have to be incredibly efficient. And so picking what part of the story is the one that I feel like says the most about who Kolbe was, that gives the best sense of his character. And I really felt called to telling the story very much like from the perspective that I had come to it in, almost as one of the men who was in the cell who did not get the happy ending. If I was one of those men and I was witnessing this story, and God was ministering to me through it, that's how I want to tell it. And so I picked, I did a lot of research on those who were in the cell, those who were in Auschwitz with Kolbe at the time, and sort of created a 12 Angry Men type like character set of people based on the types of people who were there and the stories of people who were there at the time. and then of course, like, it's really important to, I think, to understand a saint, you have to really understand what they were fighting against. And they are there for their time. You know, they're there to be a ballast against whatever the enemy is doing in the world at the time. And I found that kind of antagonist character in Fritsch. He wasn't the commandant of the camp. He was like a lieutenant, if you will. But he was the man who basically designed this whole torture of picking 10 men at random to die of starvation if somebody went missing. And he was also the one that designed and kind of conceived of gas as the way to kill prisoners, and lots of other tortures that were being experimented on in Auschwitz. He saw himself very much as like a man of science that was almost an engineer that was experimenting on how to like destroy the soul of Poland in order to subjugate it. At the time, this is before the Holocaust, and so this was really kind of about the conquest of Poland and the destruction of that in order to make way for kind of the Third Reich and kind of the Aryan dominance that the Nazis were trying to bring. And so his story to me was like this amazing poetic opposite to Kolbe's story. And I really tried to kind of compare and contrast those two in the movie.
You did a fantastic job. And I also really appreciate, Anthony, that you allow the viewers to be intelligent. You're not spoon feeding them, you know, everything that's going on and giving, you know, extra explanations. There are things that are happening throughout the film that you need to be, as a viewer, paying attention to and appreciating. So I appreciate that. So thank you for recognizing that, by and large, people that are watching the film are intelligent and can figure out what's going on and be moved by it in their own circumstances. So I'm curious, what surprised you the most in the film making process, or what moment was the most impactful for you while filming in Poland?
Oh, man, that is really hard.
It's a lot, I bet.
Yeah, I mean, because it's, well, just to give you a perspective of like what it takes. Were you involved in planning a wedding at any time in your life?
Yes, yeah, that's a lot.
A lot. So, and how long did it kind of take you from start to finish to plan it?
Yeah, it's about a year. So, I mean, you just start with the little things, but there are so many things that can't be done until right before the wedding, or actually during the wedding. So, yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. So, basically, it's actually the best reference point that anybody could have to like what it takes to do a day of filming, like a shoot. It's very similar. Like all of the event type stuff that has to go into it that you'd never really think about. Like, everybody's coming into town and we need to make sure that we can get people around, and like, how do we arrange the car situation? Oh, and it turns out that this person can't drive stick shift, and like all the cars that we have are stick shift. So like, what do we do? You know, like there's just like so many little details that you could never, ever in a million years would think about, but they become incredibly important for being able to get something done. For us, it was like, so we went to Poland in August, and we had 2 months before we started shooting. No family or friends. We didn't know the language. And it was like, 30 days of shooting. So like 30 weddings back to back to back every day. So that's kind of the challenge that we were up against and what we kind of had in front of us to have to overcome. And so in order to be able to do that, and to do that without money, means that we had to sort of be beggars. Like we just had to go out in faith and expect God to move. And that was definitely my greatest experience of, like, I guess the Franciscan virtue of poverty, like what it is like to live almost completely on the providence of God. And I guess like one experience of this was our days of shooting the exterior Auschwitz scenes are the most complicated because you have hundreds of extras, you have German vehicles and reenactors and dogs and the dog trainers that trained the German shepherds that are there, and you have people who are getting their heads shaved to be the extras, and you have art direction that has created all the concrete bags and the barbed wire fences and all that stuff, right? So you have an incredible sort of that there's thousands of contracts that are involved, closing down the city street, getting all the cars moved away for parking, so that you don't have a car in the background of the shot, security guards that are keeping people from walking on set. Anyway, we were going to do that first because it was October. We didn't want to get too late in the year and risk snow. And so we're planning responsibly to shoot at the very end of September. And we knew that the one thing, like we could deal with rain, we could deal with anything. The one thing that we could not deal with was if a freak snow happened like really early in the year. And we're like that, but the odds of that are like, it's like 1 out of 90. Like it's so low that we're going to just take the risk and do it. And sure enough, like the week before, there is a freak snow that comes out on our calendar, when we're checking the weather. And we're just like, I think all of us were about to have a panic attack at it because we just knew, like this is literally the worst possible thing that could happen to our shoot. Like we have no way to figure this out. We were forced with this decision. Like, are we going to try and move forward and do it anyway with the snow? Are we going to try to reschedule all of those contracts for like 3 days later, which we don't even know is possible, and it's definitely going to cost us another maybe $50,000? Or do we, do we try to just like come back to Poland next year? And all of the other options sort of closed down. We realized we just needed to figure it out. Ultimately, it was a great surprise that we did. But one of the things that happened was that we lost about half of our crew who were not able to, who were not scheduled for that time. Like half of the people that we had sort of set up were not able to be there. So one of those was our stunt person. And I was like, we need a stunt person to help us with all these beatings and things. Every single thing that happens in that scene, there's like, brutality. So to make that look really good, you have to have somebody that really knows how to coach people on how to fall, how to receive a hit, and how to do all that safely.
Oh my gosh.
And we were 3 days out. I put something out to the different Facebook groups in Poland, and somebody referred me to a guy who, I interviewed. I was a little bit like tense in the interview and wasn't all that kind, but this guy was like kind of won me over. So then I went and looked at his IMDb and realized that he was the last movie that he was on was Mission Impossible. He was one of the stunt people from Mission Impossible. And he had a great devotion to St. Maximilian Kolbe.
Oh my gosh.
And he was like, I'm going to bring my whole team out. Like, we'll do all the stunts for you guys. We'll just charge you the cost of like our hotel. Don't worry about it. And like we got basically a $200,000, like, super professional stunt team, for the cost of like, a hotel room in Poland.
Gosh, that's so great.
And so like, just things like that, like I would say that, and that's just one, like so many things like that happened, that made the movie even better than it could have been had like we planned it and had the money to plan it, and like we're not living in this sort of extreme poverty that put us in reliance on the Lord.
Exactly. The virtue of poverty, leaning on him and trusting him. I mean, my gosh, humility, all the things that we need to have to really prove that we do trust him. Wow. Okay. So we've got just a little under 10 minutes left, maybe about 7 minutes left here, Anthony. And I want to tell our listeners, where is the best place to go to watch the film What do you should we just take them to your website for watching it for now? What do you think?
Yeah, go to our site, www.triumphtheheart.com. You can also watch it on forums.org.
Oh, right. Okay.
It's $20 to stream it. And that's, or you can, buy a DVD if you're still a DVD person.
Yes. Okay. $20 to stream, and it's so worth that. Oh my goodness. All right. A couple more questions here, Anthony. What do you hope audiences take away from this film? What would be the main message you'd like to give?
Yeah, specifically that God can overcome any suffering, any darkness in your life. Like really anything that doesn't feel like God is present in or taken care of, if given to him, he can actually make it beautiful. And no matter how dark or godless it feels. And that's certainly the story of my own life. That was the story of Kolbe's life. And it's the story of the crucifixion. It's like the story of Christianity as a whole. And so, yeah, I think that people will discover that and feel that very deeply as they're watching the film.
Tell me, have you had any reactions from audiences that have moved you, Anthony? What kind of response have you gotten?
Yeah, there was one moment that I was really moved by. I actually popped into a theater here in Denver that was showing the movie just to kind of see how people were, responding to it. And a couple people realized who I was. And afterwards kind of, we went out into the lobby and had a little Q&A, and they ended up like deciding that they all wanted to pray together. And so we had 100 people out in the middle of like AMC praying a decade of the rosary, and it was just a really beautiful kind of like moment of solidarity, and perhaps even like a sense of like all of these people were so moved that they just didn't care about like the social propriety of that space and the norms of that space. Were just so moved that they wanted to pray and didn't really care where, And so I just really was appreciative of that experience and to see God moving in hearts in such a profound way. I mean, there's been thousands of people who have shared like really profound things with us. There's a sort of testimony that people can kind of give online after they stream the movie, and just so many things, like people facing great suffering in their life and overcoming that or finding hope, coming back to faith, like sharing it with somebody who's struggling in their faith and seeing that person kind of being reinforced and coming back to church for the first time. The stories are really endless. They go on and on.
They do. And you know that it's a good movie when you're just sitting there and I don't even know if it's called credits anymore, but the credits at the end are rolling and you can't move. And it certainly did that for me and for my family. I wonder, Anthony, which aspect of Kolbe's life challenges you today? Do you have any challenges with him?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I literally was just talking to my team about that. That's a great question. This is it. Like, okay, so I guess like one of the things that's really honest is that we're leaving this movie with about like $500,000 of debt, and it didn't make its money back. And it's really hard to kind of stomach that, knowing like we've kind of given our whole lives to this for the last 5 years, and it's just like still a weight, that we're going to have to be kind of like paying back for a very long time. And it's easy for me to be like resentful and kind of be like, God, why would you call me to this and then leave me with this sort of almost like suffocating amount of responsibility that I don't feel like, that I have an answer for. There's not lots of allies in the media world where we're going to be able to sell it to Netflix or whatever, to cover that. So like, where does that all come from? And just like trying to accept the fact that like Kolbe's story is not a story of monetary success is actually really hard for me. Like the end of his life, after he had built this amazing apostolate that had, a massive syndication, millions of people were getting his newspaper daily. That felt like success, and then the Germans came in and destroyed his entire life's work in the course of a month. And the end of his life was this, from all kind of worldly perspectives, was failure. But like in the vision of God and in God's eyes, it was a success that helped to save the country, like to save the soul of the country. And I think that I've been really kind of wrestling with like letting God teach me that lesson, that's not his main concern, that he'll give me what I need, at least what I need in order to accomplish his will, might not be what I need in order to feel comfortable or to feel successful or to feel like, my vanity has been massaged, but it certainly is like like when I look at the fruit of the movie that has been born already, I think it's pretty amazingly evident that God is at work and that God was doing this. So I just have to trust him and accept that like what he gives me is what I need, or is at least something that he can turn around and turn into something really beautiful. So yeah.
Yes. All things work for good for those that love the Lord and live according to his purposes. And you said failure, maybe in the eyes of the world, but not of God, Anthony. Mm-hmm. All right. So themes maybe that you hope to explore in future projects before we wrap up.
Oh, I mean, oh my gosh. I really want to do a Saint Nicholas Christmas movie.
Oh.
I want to do like a Disney type musical that's like the origin story of Saint Therese, the little flower with like her family. I think there's just like so many things that are like out there that can be done. It really is just like a matter of are we as a people, as a Catholic kind of people, going to be willing to sort of like become the people that patron art again.
Yes, exactly.
Like we were famous for our cathedrals, and we've lost that like culture that would make us able to promote these sorts of things. Mm-hmm. And I really think film is the modern cathedral. It's the place where people can be immersed in the story of the gospel through the most, the most modern medium of storytelling. And it takes that, like, that's what it takes in order to do it. It takes the same level of investment to be able to pull off. Mm-hmm. And so I think that, if we want really good art and we want these stories to be told that really bring forward the story of our church, we have to become people who are willing to pay for that, and to sort of wean ourselves off of the expectation that like we're going to get everything for free, or
exactly.
for like, a couple dollars on Amazon.
Right. Right.
And that's, it's just a completely different market, right? Like if I wanted to make a really like horrible, like trashy, brainwashy thing for Netflix or Amazon, like I could pitch that and find the economics for it. But right now there's no like place where a movie like this can be done in the Catholic or coming out of the Catholic world. And so that's really like the thing that I'm trying to meditate on is like, okay, I know that this one was amazing, that we made something really powerful, but movies take a lot of money to make. How am I going to do that again? If God is calling me to do that again, I hope so. And that's what I'm praying and kind of wrestling with God on right now.
I'm by nature, I'm a fixer too, Anthony. And I really feel like Triumph of the Heart is your marketing sell for those individuals that might be, rolling in the dough that want to support projects like this. So I will certainly play my part here locally in what I can do to spread the word. And wow, thank you so much for sharing your gift. And I love film is the modern cathedral. Good film, maybe I should say, is the modern cathedral. That's such a great point. So, well, thank you so much, Anthony, for sharing with us today. It's incredible, your story, your faith, and the journey behind Triumph of the Heart. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor.
It's been an honor for us, too. Okay, I really encourage you to check out the film. It's a powerful, hope-filled look at the life of St. Maximilian Kolbe and the light he offers in our own moments of suffering. If you missed any part of this episode or want to catch up on past conversations filled with inspiration and hope, you can find them all at divinemercyradio.org. Just click on local shows. And don't forget, you can take FaithWorks with you wherever you go. Just download the free Divine Mercy Radio app from your app store. Simply search Divine Mercy Radio NC and you're all set to listen anytime, anywhere. God bless.